Hey everyone, thanks for joining me episode and Play Games. My name is Lance, and today I'm going to teach you how to play the Artemis Project. This is a new game by the Grand Gamers Guild. It is a 1 to 5 player game that takes roughly 60 to 75 minutes to play, and is a competitive game, so each player is working against the other players to get the most points and be the overall winner at the end of the game. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to play starting with components, setup, player turns, and endgame conditions and scoring. As always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing to my channel, as it really does make a big difference. It helps me to continue to grow and be able to produce these videos. If you want to stay on all my videos, also consider ringing that bell so you get notifications anytime I release new content. So let's head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. There are 4 different resources included in the game: expedition badges, toolkits, energy, and minerals. And there are 4 different types of colonists: pioneers, engineers, marines, and stewards. And I'll go into each one of those more in detail a little bit later in the video. There's also 2 different decks of cards that players will be working with throughout the game. The first deck is the event cards, and each one of these is going to have a name of the event, when it will be triggered during the resolution phase, and the effects of that event. And the second deck of cards are the expedition cards. Each one of these is going to list a number of resources in the top corner, which will be used during round setup and has no relevance on the expedition card itself. Then you have the difficulty of the expedition, the name and flavor text of it, and finally the rewards of that. And I'll go into more detail about these a little bit later in the video. There's also 2 groups of building tiles that players will be able to acquire throughout the game. This first set are the ocean tiles, and these can be acquired during rounds 1, 2, and 3. Each of these tiles will list the name of the building, locations for colonists to be placed, with some locations having a specific requirement for a colonist, and then if all those locations are full, then the player will gain a benefit during the upkeep phase. For example, with this one here, this one requires us to have 2 engineers and 1 of any colored colonist in there. Once that location is full, during the upkeep phase, my player can gain either 2 energy or 2 minerals. During rounds 4, 5, and 6, you can acquire surface buildings, which again will have locations for colonists to be placed, and at the end of the game, if a building has all of its locations full of colonists, it will provide players with additional opportunities to gain victory points. For example, with the Sentry Pylon, if this location is full, you'll get 1 victory point, and if there's a Marine in that location, you'll gain another victory point. Both of the tiles also have a little icon up in the top corner for some of the tiles, and if you're playing a 2-player game, you'll go ahead and remove all of the tiles that have that symbol. And the final thing I want to go over before moving into setup is the game board itself, and it has 7 different locations that players will be able to visit throughout the round, which are the base camp, outfitters, vents, quarry, gantry, doorstep, and the academy. Each of these locations will have a number, which is the order in which players will resolve them during the resolution step, and will also have event numbers or letters next to them, which is when that event will be triggered. There's also going to be a score track and a relief track, which will provide players with additional resources throughout the game. For general setup, go ahead and place the main game board out in the middle of the table, and then make sure you have all of your resources out as well. And for this video, I'll be using the Crystal Fortress pod sets, and if you want to find out more information about those, I'll have a link in the description below to their website. Next, go ahead and grab 4 Marines, 4 Engineers, and 4 Stewards, and place those in the Academy. Then give each player a Pioneer meeple, and all the rest of the meeple colonists can go into the bag, or you can use the ship if you want to use the ship as well. Then go ahead and grab the tiles for the 2 different buildings and separate those into the surface and ocean tiles. From there, then shuffle those up and place those next to the game board. Shuffle up the event deck and draw 6 cards from it, and these will be the events for this game. And this will also represent the timer as the game is played over 6 rounds. The rest of the event cards can be returned to the game box as you will not use those. You can also place the event marker next to that deck. And then finally go ahead and grab the expedition cards, shuffle that deck up, and place that to the side of the game board. From here then I'll move into player setup. Each player board is going to have a location for their dice pool, the different resources they can gather throughout the game, and their meeples, a quick reference guide to the colonists' abilities for expeditions, and locations to place their buildings when they purchase them. For player setup, each player will choose a color and gain the board of that color. They'll get 5 dice of that color and 2 tokens to track their score and relief. Each player will also receive 1 Pioneer, 1 Toolkit, 3 energy, and 3 minerals to start the game. Then I'm going to choose the starting player, and you can do this in any manner you want to. I usually gather up one of each of the colored tokens, shuffle them up, and have one player draw blindly, and that'll be the starting player. For my game, I'm going to have the green player be the starting player, and he's going to receive the phase marker. Then each player is going to gather up their tokens and place one on the score track and one on the relief track. And then the final step is board setup, and this is going to happen at the beginning of the game and then before each new round. So with each step of this, each location is going to have iconology that is going to tell you exactly how to do that location for this setup. Starting with the base camp, if there's any expedition cards that are currently out there, you're going to discard those to the discard pile, and then you're going to reveal new ones based on the number of players minus 1. So with me playing a 3-player game, I'm going to reveal the top 2 cards in this. From there, I'm going to take a look at these cards, and if any of them have any predetermined things that I have to set up, I'll do that now. For example, with this one, you're going to receive 1 colonist for this. That's random, so I'll take 1 colonist from the bag and place it on that location. And this step happens the same with buildings. If there's a building icon on there, you'll reveal a building and place it next to it. You also want to leave some space on the side where players are going to place their dice. Next, we'll move over to the vents, and again, that has that icon on there to tell you exactly how to set it up. First, any energy that's on there currently is going to be returned to the supply. Then next, you're going to look at the expedition cards that are out and count up the number of energy on each of those. So this one has 3 plus 5, and then you're going to add 2 additional to that, so I'll have 7 energy out there. The same thing happens with the quarry, so I'm going to count up my minerals, 2 plus 3 plus 2 for 7 as well. And if there was any out there before, that would also have been returned to the supply. Next, with the gantry, you're going to reveal a number of buildings based on the number of players and the round that it is. So with this being the first round, I'll reveal ocean buildings, and I'll reveal 3 of them. And there can be a max of 8 here, so you do not remove buildings from previous rounds with this. Then the doorstep, you're going to reveal a number of colonists from the bag at random and place them in here, plus 2. And there's going to be a max of 12 in here, so you will not remove these from previous rounds. So I'll reveal 5 as there's 3 players, and then 2 additional. And there's nothing that needs to be done with the academy or with the outfitter. Then you're going to reveal the next card of the event deck, and look at the letter that it's going to trigger on and place the event marker on that location. So with this event, it's G, so we'll place the marker on G. From here, we can begin the round. Artemis Project is played over 6 rounds, and during each round it is broken down into 3 phases, which are the placement phase, resolution phase, and upkeep phase. At the end of the 6th round, the players will enter into a special final scoring round, and the player that has the most victory points will be the winner of the game. The first phase in the round is the placement phase, and to start this round, each player is going to roll their set of dice and then place it on their dice pool. From there, beginning with the starting player and moving around the table in a clockwise manner, each player is going to take a turn placing one of their die in one of the 7 regions around the board. They can place the die anywhere they want to, and a player can also spend toolkits, and for each toolkit the player spends, they can modify their die plus 1 or minus 1 value. And they can never take a die below 1 or above 6, and they can spend any number of toolkits that they have to do this. The first location is the base camp, and when you place a die here, you're going to choose one of the expeditions you'd like to go on and place your die on the bottom of that expedition. If there are previous dice already there, then you're going to place your die above those dice, no matter the value. It doesn't matter. You don't have to place highest to lowest or anything like that. And the overall goal with this one is to have a number of dice there that are going to equal or beat the difficulty level of that expedition. Now, anytime you place a die there, you can also choose to spend a resource, which would either be an energy or mineral, and add colonists to that location. You could add multiple pioneers or one of the other types of colonists. So first with pioneers, when you place them with your die, they're going to add plus 1 for each pioneer you add to that die value. And you don't need to change the value of the die. And in this way, if you place such a 6 there, these would actually add above that. And that's the only way you can go above a die number. So this would actually be 8 for the green player. Now, you can also choose to add one of the other types of colonists. So if you add an engineer to that location, then if the expedition is successful, you're going to gain 2 resources of your choice in addition of any other resources or bonuses that you gain. And if you send a Marine, then you immediately are going to reduce an opponent's die at the same expedition by 1 or 2, actually changing the die, and you cannot reduce the die below 1. So in this situation, it wouldn't do any good, but if this player, say, had a 3, then you could choose to use the Marine and drop him down to a 1. And then the final one is the steward, and with this one, you can only place a steward with your die if it is a value of 1 or 2, and then with that, if the expedition is successful and you are the first to choose a reward, then you're going to gain 1 additional victory point on top of the reward that you would gain. And with this, the only way you're really going to normally pull this off is if you place additional dice there. And I'll go into how that works during resolution. The vents are the first location that is going to use the exposure mechanic. And this is going to be used in a number of different locations. So with this, each time you place a die, you're going to place it to the right of all existing dice that are equal or lesser value than your die. And for this, let me show you an example. I'm going to add some dice into this location. So let's go ahead and say that my green player wants to add a 1 to this location. So since this is the lowest number, he's going to place it all the way to the left, as all the other dice are higher than it. But let's go ahead and say that he wanted to place a 2 there instead. So in this situation, he's going to place it to the right of any die that's equal or less than that value. So this one would actually slide in between there. And with this location, you're going to be getting energy based on the die value that you place there, starting from the left and working your way across. So if you place a really high value die there, you would get a lot of energy unless there's other dice before you that will collect it and not leave any for any dice that are remaining. The quarry is going to use the same exposure mechanic. So again, anytime you place a die at this location, you're going to place it to the right of any die of equal or lesser value. So with this one being the first player, I'll just place it right there on the far left side. The fourth location is the gantry, and with this location, you're going to place a die on a building you wish to construct, and the value of the die you place there is the amount of minerals that you were bidding to construct that building. Now you may place a die on a building that already has other dice on it, but your die's value must be higher than each other die there. You may outbid yourself or outbid another player who has outbid you, and you do not need to possess the bid amount of minerals when you place your die. But if you don't own them by the time the gantry is resolved in the resolution phase, you won't be able to buy the building, so plan ahead. So with this, let's go ahead and say, for example, this player, the yellow player, wanted the drone docks and places a 3 there. Then the green player decides that he wants to place a die in one of these locations, so he could place a lower die in one of the other locations, or if he wanted to go after this location, he'd have to place a 4 or higher at this location to outbid the yellow player. The doorstep is also going to use the exposure mechanic, which works the same as the vents in the quarry, and your die's value indicates how many colonists you will be permitted to recruit from the doorstep during the resolution. And there's also a quick reference guide here, so if you place a 1 or 2, you'll be able to recruit up to 1 colonist. A 3 or 4, you'll be able to do 1 or 2, and a 5 or 6 is 1 to 3. And when you place a die here, you do not need to possess the needed energy for this location, but if you don't own it by the time the doorstep is resolved during the resolution phase, you won't be able to recruit your desired colonists. The Academy is going to allow you to train colonists in other roles, and there are only 2 locations that you can place a die with this, and only 1 if you're playing a 2-player game. Anytime you want to place a die here, you're going to place a colonist above it, and then place the die that you want to place there, following the chart on the side here. So if you place a 1 or 2, your colonist will be converted into an engineer, 3 or 4 into a marine, and a 5-6 will turn him into a steward. The one other important thing with this is that if the academy is out of the type that you wish to convert to, say there's no more stewards left, then you cannot convert a colonist to that type, and the die is simply going to be wasted. And the final location is the outfitter, and this is a unique location as it is going to be resolved immediately when you place a die there. And based on the value of the die you place there, you will gain a number of toolkits. So 1 through 4, you're going to gain 1 toolkit. In a 5 or 6, you'll gain 2 toolkits immediately, adding them to your player board. And there is no limit to the number of dice that can be placed here. Now that I've covered all the different locations, let's put it all together and I'll take you through a sample placement phase. So we're going to start with the green player as he is the first player, so he is going to start by placing a die in the vents. Moving over to orange, orange will take a die and place it in the complex. Then the purple player is going to go, and she's going to go on an expedition. So she's going to place one of her dice there, and she's not going to spend a resource to add a colonist. Moving back to the green player, he is going to place a die up here. Moving back over to the orange player, he is going to also go after energy, and since he's got a smaller number, he's going to go before the green player. Moving back over to our purple player, she is going to continue that expedition, trying to complete that location. From here, I'm going to finish the rest of the placement phase off camera, and then I'll be back to move into the resolution phase. To start the resolution phase, the first player with the phase marker is going to place it on the first location, or location A. From there, each location is going to be resolved completely, and then the phase marker will be moved to the next location, resolving that location until all of the locations have been resolved. The first location is base camp, and when you resolve this, you're going to resolve each expedition card separately, beginning with the one closest to the deck and working your way down. If the combined total of all the players' dice by a card is lower than the expedition difficulty, then that expedition has failed, and each player that has dice there is going to receive nothing and will gain 1 space on the relief track. And I'm going to go into more detail about the relief track a little bit later in the video. If the combined total of all the dice by the card equals or exceeds the expedition's difficulty, then it was a success. The player with the highest combined value of their own dice plus any pioneers is going to gain 1 expedition badge and picks a reward from the 2 shown on the card. The player with the second highest value of dice is also going to gain 1 expedition badge and is going to receive the remaining reward. Any other player with dice there receives nothing and is going to gain 1 space on the relief track. So with this first one here, if we total this up, there's 6 points, 13, 17 points combined with all the players and their pioneers, so that does exceed the expedition value, and so this is a successful expedition. From there, then, you're going to total up the value of all the players' dice on there, so our green player has 10 points, and the purple player has 7. So the green player has 1 and will gain an expedition badge, and will get to choose one of the 2 rewards. And all of these are referenced on page 13 for more detail. So the green player is going to select the first reward, and that will move him up 2 spaces on the relief track. The first space, as you can see, is 2 of the toolkits, and the second space is 2 energy. So these will be added to his board immediately. And then the second player there is the purple player, so she will gain an expedition badge and the second reward, which is a victory point for every one of the Marines that she owns, which unfortunately right now she has none, so she won't get any additional victory points there, but she gains the expedition badge. If there was another player there, that player would not receive anything and will simply move 1 space up on the relief track. Then this location has been resolved. Each player is going to receive any colonists that they spent there back to their shelter and or their expedition hub, but they are not allowed to place them in any other building that they have. And they will also receive the dice back for that location. Then it will be discarded, and the next location will be resolved. Ties are going to be broken by the player that placed a die lower on the card. If only one player has dice present on a successful expedition, that player gains both rewards, but will only gain 1 expedition badge. So with this second one, our purple player did have enough to complete the expedition, so it was successful, and she's the only player there, so she's going to receive 1 expedition badge, but then she's also going to receive both rewards, so she'll gain 3 minerals and the Marine that was on that location, adding those to her board. And also remember to account for any colonist abilities as you resolve. The next location is the vents, and this is the first location with the exposure mechanic. So starting with the leftmost die and working across, each player is going to collect their die and a number of energy up to that die value. So the orange player, he's going to receive 3 energy and add those back to his board. Then the next die is also orange, so he's going to gain 3 more energy and add it to his board. And then the final player is the green player, who is going to gain the last energy, as that is all that's left, and add it back to his board. And for any die that earns 0 energy because the energy ran out, that die is exposed and earns nothing, and the player is going to gain 1 space on the relief track. The quarry is handled in the same way as the vents, so each player starting with the leftmost will collect their resources based on their dice, so orange is going to collect 5, and he's the only player there. The fourth location is the gantry, and with this you're going to resolve each building tile that has dice on it separately. The player with the highest value single die has the option to pay that much in minerals in order to claim the building tile. that player may choose not to spend those minerals to buy the building, or may not have enough minerals to spend. That player does not gain anything on the relief track, and in this case, the option goes to the player with the next highest die value, and so on until either all the players have had a chance that have dice on there, or the location is purchased. If you are outbid by another player and not yourself, and that player does pay for the claim on the building, you gain 1 space on the relief track. So let's look at a couple of examples of this. So starting with this first location here, the orange player is the only player with a die, and so that player can choose to spend 1 mineral to purchase this location. If he does not, then this location simply stays there and he'll gain his dice back, or his die back. So he is going to pay the 1 mineral and gain that location. And then we'll move over to the next one. So the green player can do the same thing. He can spend 1 mineral, as that is the number on the die, to purchase this location. So he's definitely going to do that. And that is all the locations, as nobody placed any dice on that final location. But let's go ahead and say, for example, that our players had done this, and the orange player has the highest die, so he could choose to pay that amount first. So he'd have to pay 2 minerals to purchase that location, and he chooses not to, so then that option would go to the green player to pay 1 mineral to purchase this location. When you purchase a building, line it up beside your player mat according to whether it is an ocean or surface building, and when you gain a building, you may immediately move any colonists you wish from your shelter to that building if there is room. So with my player here, he did gain an ocean building, so he's going to add that to the ocean location. And he does have a colonist in the shelter that does match one of the colonists that he can place on that building, so he's going to go ahead and add that colonist right away. The doorstep is going to again start with the leftmost die and proceed to the right, resolving each die before moving on to the next. Each die's value is going to determine the maximum number of colonists that can be purchased at that location, and each colonist purchase is going to cost 2 energy. So starting with the green player, that player can choose to purchase up to 2 colonists, as he played a 3 or 4 number. So he is going to spend 4 energy and purchase both of the engineers, adding them to his area. And then he'll claim that die back, and then the purple player can choose to purchase up to 2 colonists. And the purple player only has 3 energy, so she is only going to spend 2 energy to purchase one of the stewards and add it to her area. And when you gain a colonist, you may immediately place it into any of your own buildings where you have room, otherwise it's going to go to your shelter. And if the colonists run out before all the dice have been resolved, any unresolved die gains its owner 1 space on the relief track, and you may always choose to not take any colonists even if some remain, but you do not gain on the relief track unless there are no colonists at the doorstep when your die's turn is resolved. The 6th location is the Academy, and each player with a die at the Academy discards their placed colonist from the game and gains the appropriate, according to their die value, colonist from the Academy supply. If there are none remaining of the type you should gain, your action here is wasted and you retrieve your placed colonist, but you do not gain 1 on their space on the relief track. The Academy of the space on the left is resolved first if both are filled, and as always, you may immediately place your new colonists in any of your own buildings where you have room, otherwise it's going to go to your shelter. So in the example here, the orange player has placed a colonist, so this will be discarded and removed from the game. And then he placed a 5 or 6 there, so he's going to gain a steward from the Academy, and then he can place it in his shelter or in one of the buildings that he has currently that has room for it. From there, then he's going to gain that die back, and then we would move over to the next location if there's a player there. Again, if there isn't a colonist there of the die you place, you won't get anything, and you'll receive your colonist back. Now, during the resolution phase, as you're resolving the different locations, when you come to the event marker, you're going to stop and resolve that event. So this event marker happens after the 6th location, so then we're going to reference the event card. As you can see here, the temperatures plummet. Each player must pay 1 energy or lose 1 colonist for every 3 colonists they have, rounding down. So starting with the green player, he has 3 colonists, so he's going to have to spend 1 energy. The purple player has 3 colonists as well, so she's going to have to spend her last energy. And the orange player has 1 colonist, so he is going to have to spend no energy as he does not have 3 colonists. Once the event is resolved, you can remove the event marker and proceed to the next location if there are any remaining. And the final spot is the outfitter, and dice placed here have already been resolved during the placement phase, so players can simply collect any dice that are placed here of theirs. Whenever you gain on the relief track, usually because you had a exposed die, went on a failed expedition, or were outbid on a building, you're going to get to move your relief track marker one space to the right. Then you're going to gain the reward shown above the space your marker is in, or any one reward your marker has already passed. Once your marker reaches the end of the relief track, you will no longer move it or gain relief track benefits for the remainder of the game, even if you would normally be entitled to do so. So for example, with the green player, if he gains one space on the relief track, he would either gain 2 minerals, or he could choose to gain one of the previous rewards on that track. And then once he reaches the final space on that track, then he cannot proceed any further and will not restart on that track and will not gain any more benefits for the rest of the game. Once you've completed the resolution phase, you'll move into the final phase of the round, which is the upkeep phase. And during this phase, there are 5 steps the players are going to follow in order. The first step is that each player may perform one colonist move swipe. This means that you may either move a colonist from its current location to an empty space in a building with room, or to your shelter, or swipe a current position of any 2 colonists in your buildings or shelters as long as there is room in both of their destinations. So for example, with my green player here, he could, if he didn't have a colonist in this location, he could move a colonist from his shelter into that location. Or if that was a blank location that could have any colonist in it, he could choose to swipe this pioneer colonist with his engineer. The second step is to activate fully staffed buildings. So each player may activate their fully staffed ocean buildings, and most ocean buildings provide some sort of benefit that can be gained at this time, as long as this building is fully staffed. Players may activate their buildings now and in any order they choose and gain the benefits described. So for example, with my green player, he does have a fully staffed building, which is going to gain him 1 mineral, or 1 energy and 1 mineral. The orange player does not have a fully staffed building, so he won't be able to take advantage of that. The third step is to pay energy for colonists in your shelters. So for each colonist of any type in your shelters, you must pay 1 energy to keep them warm. If you don't have enough energy to pay to warm all of the colonists in your shelters, pay for as many as you can, or your choice which ones get paid for, and discard any colonists that are not paid for. So starting with the green player here, he has 1 colonist in the shelter, so he's going to have to discard 1 energy. The orange player does not have any colonists in the shelters, so he doesn't have to pay anything. And the purple player, the poor purple player, she has no energy and 3 colonists in the shelters, so she's going to lose all 3 of them as she can't keep them warm. The fourth step is to refresh the game board, which is done just like at the beginning of the game during the board setup. So I'll go through that real quick with you again. So first off, with the base camp, you'll clear any of the expeditions that are there and add them to the discard pile, and then reveal new ones based on the number of players -1. So we'll add 2 new ones. Then moving on to the next location, we're going to generate energy. Any energy that's there is going to be removed, and then we'll calculate new energy. So we're going to get 9 this time. We'll do the same thing with the minerals. We'll clear the old ones and add new ones. So we'll have 12. Moving on to the gantry, we'll reveal new locations based on the number of players. Adding to this, over to the doorstep, again, we'll reveal 5 colonists. And there's nothing that we need to do in the academy or outfitters. So the final step is to reveal a new event card and then place the marker on it. So we will have it on the letter F this time. And the final step of upkeep is to choose a new start player. The player with the fewest resources is going to choose the start player for the next round. If there is a tie, the tied player furthest clockwise in order from the previous start player chooses. Then the new round begins with the placement phase. So currently the green player, it has the fewest, so he is going to choose the new start player. So he'll have the purple player be the new start player. From here, then I can begin a new round. And this is going to continue for 6 rounds. At the end of the 6th round, you will not go through a setup step. You will go into a final scoring step to determine the winning player. And the last thing I want to cover is final scoring. For this, I'm just going to show you 1 player, but each one of these steps is going to be resolved in order by all the players at the same time. So there are 7 different steps that the players are going to follow in order, and the first one is saved energy and saved minerals, and you're going to gain 1 victory point for every 5 energy you have left, up to a maximum of 3 victory points, and 1 victory point for every 5 minerals you have left, up to 3 victory points. So the green player, he has 5 minerals, so he's going to gain 1 victory point for that, and he has 9 of the energy, so he's only going to gain 1 victory point for that. The second step is the fully staffed surface buildings. So for each fully staffed surface building you have in your colony, you're going to score victory points as described on that building tile. And surface buildings that are not fully staffed do not score. So the first location is fully staffed, the Explorers League. So with this one, I'm going to gain 1 victory point, plus 1 victory point for every 2 pioneers in my entire colony, regardless of whether they're in buildings or in shelters. So I'm going to gain the 1 victory point for having that, and then 1 for every 2 of the pioneers. So 1, 2, 3 extra points. So 1, 2, 3. The second location, I'm going to get 1 victory point. Plus, I'll get another victory point if I have a steward in this location. So I'll gain that. And then the final location is the armorist. So I'm going to gain 1 victory point for that. And then I'm going to gain 1 victory point for every 2 of the toolkits I have. So I have 4, so I'll get 2 more for that. The third step is going to have each player total up the number of buildings they've constructed, and then based on the chart, as you can see here, you're going to score a number of points. So my player has constructed 6 buildings, so he's going to receive 5 victory points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fourth step is colonist sets. You're going to receive 3 victory points for every full set of 4 colonists you have. For this, you can remove the colonists from the boards as you won't need those anymore. So I have 1 Marine, 1 Steward, 1 Engineer, and 1 Pioneer, so I'm going to receive 3 victory points for that. And I don't have any more Marines, so I won't be able to complete any additional sets. So then these guys can be set off to the side. And the fifth step is leftover colonists. So for every group of 3 colonists in your colony, regardless of type, that are not part of the above set, you're going to score 1 victory point. So I'm going to receive 1, 2, 3 more victory points for that. The sixth step is the expedition badges. You're going to earn victory points based on the number of expedition badges you've collected as displayed on the chart. So as you can see here, my player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So based on the chart, he is going to receive 3 victory points for that. And then finally, the player that has the most toolkits is going to earn 2 victory points, or if they're tied for the most. The purple player actually has 8 toolkits, so our green player will not receive anything for this. At this point, the player with the most victory points is going to win, and if there is a tie, the tie player who went earlier in the turn is going to be the winner. Well, I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my videos and leave me feedback on them. I do really appreciate it, and I take into account everything you guys say to make the best possible videos. If you found this video helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe to my channel, as it really does make a big difference. It helps me to continue to grow and produce these videos. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.